Hi, and good afternoon and welcome. I have a new story, which I'm very excited to tell you all. And it is called Siren Calls. Bo sat there in his living room. Even though it was a cold, windy day, Bo had his window open. He loved to hear the wind and the waves in the distance. Bo sighed, and a tear welled up in his eyes. Swiftly through the open window, Bo started to hear beautiful singing, wails hauntingly humming, a murmur, a soprano ghostly vocal lingers and flows with the wind in Bo Ankerton's living room. Haste, the song of the heart, why are we apart? A windswept song blows to you to belong. We'll go back to the start, before we were ripped apart. Even time is not as strong, we unite with the heart's song. The words were faint and beautifully, mystically charming, and Bo's heart elates. Bo knew she was singing from the bar called Siren Calls, which was along a small cobbled coastal lane that looked out to the ocean. Today was overcast, with patches of darker clouds of deep blue-greys. Bo sighed and got up from the sofa where he sat and put his mackintosh and lifted his cap from the hat stand beside the front door. On the way out, he put on his cap and closed the wooden front door behind him. Clunk. Bo walked along his road, past the small terraced houses. They were small, but Bo was happy with the size due to living alone. The vocal-filled wind spun around, picking up litter from the old cobbled road, spinning the rubbish into a small whirlwind. Suddenly the whirlwind took form of a face with dusky mist eyes, with circulating long hair that wrapped around Bo, which sent goose pimples surging through his body. Bo gasped as the whirlwind with her eyes looked into his. Her form was beautiful, with translucent tinted white, cloud-twisted spins. It vanished as he turned onto the road that led to the coast. Bo walked down the hill with his hands in his pocket along the footpath. He finally approached the coastal lane, and as he turned the corner, a gust of wind blustered. Bo lifted his arm, and his hand held tight to his cap on his head. The wind settled down, and Bo could hear the waves crash against the rocks and churn and froth over the sand. The tide was coming in. Bo lifted his collar on his mackintosh as he came near the bar. The pub sign rattled and squeaked as Bo walked below. Old wooden beams framed the windows with the glass dimpled and frosted. The orange-yellow glow within filled Bo's heart with comfort. Bo pushed the pub door open. The air warm and still, an open fire crackling with a slight smell of peppery smoke. The sound of glasses knocking and clinking. The chit-chat with the odd burst of laughter. Bo walked over to the bar, a long stretch of oak wood. Many wine glasses hung above. The wooden shelving behind the bar was filled with every kind of bottle, from rum, gin, wine, sherry, and vodka. The barman lifted his head and said, "What will it be, Bo, ye old sea dog?" Bo looked around the bar. His eyes looked at every corner of the bar as he was duking his head back and forth. The barman tuttered, "I have not got all night." Bo turned his head to the barman and replied, "Oh, hi, Ben. Have you seen her?" Ben rubbed the side of his face with his hand. "Don't start this again. Anyway, I'm guessing it is the usual." Ben turned and lifted a pint glass and held it under the beer tap. Ben stood there waiting and looking at Bo. Bo's eyes red, and heavy, thick, dark stubble that cloaked his face. Tufts of brown hair spewed out from around the side of Bo's cap. Ben, with his deep, growling voice, said, "Are you okay, mucker?" Bo took a deep breath and looked at Ben with a tear in his eye. "She should have been here." The glare from the flickering candle flames that bounced off the bottle sheen, a pint glass stare, and to his heart she speaks. Ben frowned. "I really don't know who you mean, Bo. I've known you when we worked on the fishing trawler." Ben lowered his head and whispered, "I'm sorry to have to say this to you, mate, but your wife died a few years ago." Bo snarled and snapped back, "I know, I'm not bloody mad." Bo lifted his pint and sipped the froth off, slurping, and then continued, "I think she visits me." Ben scoffed. "You don't believe in all that hocus pocus, do you?" A log dislodged on the fire, tumbling, and rested still. Bo turned around to the fire and gazed into the flames' enchantment with a sudden whistle and crackle, the flames licking, flapping, and lapping. Bo could have sworn he saw a face ripple in the flames. Bo turned around while his arm and finger pointed at the fire. "Did you see that? Spirits are everywhere." Ben nodded. "Not really, but I'll take your word for it. A lot of people over the years have told me many stories whilst I've been working in this bloody bar." Ben then lifts from the hook a cloth from below the counter and started cleaning and polishing the counter. Ben then stopped and looked at Bo sipping his beer and said, "Why do you think this bar is called Siren Calls?" Ben looked up in a gaze as if dreaming into space and continued, "Legend has it, this coastal village had once a galleon anchored a half a mile out. Mysterious crew, many thought pirates. However, there was a big house up on that hill above us. I think it must be that old ruin up there now." Bo nodded. "Yeah, just rubble now. I often take a walk yonder." Ben also nodded. Yeah, but back to the story. "A beautiful young woman called Oshan, who lived with her folks, and she became acquainted with one of the galleon's crew members called Bert. They both fell in love. One day, Bert went up to the large house on the hill and asked the father for her hand. The father was very angry and said, "You are not taking my daughter away from me," and called Bert worthless, telling to leave this village and never to return. But Bert and Oshan were so in love that nothing could stop them, and planned to smuggle away together the next night. But the father killed her daughter despite Bert. Bert, that night, waited and waited at the water's edge, but she never came, and Bert left thinking she had changed her mind. The galleon was never seen again, but it is said that she often walks along the beach singing out for her love's return. Bo nodded. That's her. I know it is. She has been calling me. Ben smirked. Yeah, right. As you know, there are many stories the sailors tell. Bo tutted. That's fine. I'm going here to sit down. Bo turned his back and walked over and sat in a dark corner of the bar with a candle flame flickering on the table, catching and reflecting from Bo's eyes. A little time passed with Bo in his own dream world. His own thoughts kept him company. The cold light dimmed outside as clouds stretched for miles across the sky. Then in that moment, the flickering flame danced with the haunting song. Hey's the song of the heart, why are we apart? A windswept song blows to you to belong. We'll go back to the start, before we were ripped apart. Even time is not as strong, we unite with the heart song. Bo gets up and walked over to the exit door of the bar, leaving his mind at the bottom of the empty pint glass, and he followed his heart. Ben looked up and shouted, "Leaving soon? So soon?" But Bo did not even turn around. Ben then said, "I'll see you later, mate." Bo opened the bar door and walked onto the cobbled lane. A wind whipped past his face, a wind-brushed kiss upon his cheeks. Bo crossed over the lane and walked to the old stone steps that led down onto the beach. His feet stepped onto the dark, raw sienna sands, and he looked straight out to the moody, dark teal ocean of choppy waves. Pale, ghost-white, grey clouds hovered above. A strong wind whipped up the dishevelled loose sand, which stung his face. His heart yearned with every step that led him closer to the water's edge. Bo finally stood where water met land, the waves rolling and splashing around his ankles. Suddenly, a seagull cries above in surrender to the wind, its wings stretched out, gliding and following the wind's guidance. Liquid glass shimmers on the flat, wet sand from the waves coming and going. Swiftly, a naked woman emerged, paddling through the rough waves. She walked near Bo. Bo turned his head and gasped at her beautiful form. Gradually, the water rolled and creeped up her body, clothing and wrapping her in a water gown. The water clung to her and translucently covered her private parts. The water gown flowed and trailed behind as she stepped forward. Bo falls to his knees and said, "I just want affection, to be held and wanted." Oshan stretches out her arm and replied, "Return to me, my love." Bo got up onto his feet and took her hand. Oshan slowly led him out deeper and deeper until Bo was waist deep, the waves splashing and spraying around his face and mouth, salt-stung tongue. Bo needed the quench of her look to give back what was stolen, though his tears still salty as they ran down his cheeks. Suddenly, from the cobbled lane above, and looking over their old stone wall, an old friend called Roy McCoy shouted down the beach, "Stop! Stop! Please!" Roy runs down the stone steps and on to the beach. He was panting and puffing and soon came to the water's edge. Roy ran into the water until waist deep and then dived in and started to swim. Bo was now neck deep with the waves going over his head and he was coughing, spluttering and choking. Roy grabs Bo from behind and Oshan let Bo's hand go and she said, "I am sorry. I thought Bert's spirit was here." Roy pulled Bo back and started to swim to the shore with Bo in his arms. Roy was breathing heavy and had Bo's arm around his shoulder as they walked on to the beach. Bo's head was drooped down as he continued to cough and splutter. They both fell onto the sand at a safe distance, both breathless, with the waves' open mouth roaring just meters away. Roy shook his head. "What were you thinking?" Bo rubbed his eyes and groaned. "I just wanted to be touched by her again." Roy pulled Bo in tight to his torso with his arms around him. I know, Bo." Roy looked out to the ocean and continued, "Death can never hold love captive. That's why it is important to endure loss for the sake of love. She'll always be with you, Bo, always." So that's the story. I'm going to work on it a wee bit more and stuff, but I hope you enjoyed that. I've left a picture at the end of the character Oshan, and one of the songs that I'm using for the soundtrack, though I'll choose more, is Lord Huron, "Love Like Ghosts." It's a beautiful song and well written. Anyway, I thank you very much for listening. I really do hope you enjoyed that, though it is very sad, but obviously a siren is not a mermaid, though a siren is related to water, whether it be rivers, lakes, or oceans, etc., etc. Mermaids are different, but mermaids have been known to lure sailors as well by their cries and stuff. But anyway, thank you very much.